thought that'd be personal, and so then I decided to come back.
Yeah. No, I am 95% used to being nerfed on this campaign because he does do it to me literally every time. But the big one, which I don't know if you caught or not, is he nerfed my imbue weapon, which is like 75% of my arsenal.
No, I did not catch that.
Yeah,
But
he nerfed it.
At the same time, you're rolling like 8 damage die a turn for one attack.
That
so
was
I'm okay with
yeah.
it. Yeah, you got to
You're
roll
okay
like
with
8
it.
damage die, and then every time I
No,
try to
it wasn't
ask him
8.
to do
It's 6.
every time I tried, yeah, okay, so 6 per attack.
But
Every time I
my
tried to
6 are
attack,
all D4s.
every
Uh,
time I
yeah.
tried to modify something with him, he's like, "Oh, yeah, here, take 20 MP to do that." I'm like, I'm just like getting 1.5 damage. He's like, "Nope, triple the amount of mana." So, yeah.
Yeah, your charge attack is pretty garbage. I mean, if it's in the right situation, it'll work well, but it does cost you a butt ton.
Oh, I get there was a couple battles where I was like out of mana after like 6 turns, and the monster was still alive.
Nah, yeah. And I only got 6 attack rolls, and they were all D4s. My damage is never higher than a D4 die. You have like D6s, D8s, D10s.
Only if I
I
add more
only
mana.
Yeah, but I only ever roll a D4. That's all I ever roll.
I don't agree
All
with
right,
you.
I'm back. Any questions?
You're a dick. No, I don't have any questions.
Am I supposed to have questions?
I would think so.
Am I supposed to pick skills and stuff?
You gotta go through his chart first. His chart is what grants you your skills and shit.
I'll do that next
Okay,
time.
so for starters,
I didn't know I had homework before today's session.
Neither did I.
I mean, I suppose we could have told y'all. I knew.
I mean, it's
You're
really
in on this. Fucking relatives are in on this, huh? Helping you out. Family connection and shit.
no.
Yeah, kind of like the mafia.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I mean,
We'll size you for cement shoes later.
it's not like I was on the phone with our DM yesterday that at any point he said he could be like, "Oh, hey, by the way, make sure you pick your skills before tomorrow's session."
Hey, first of all, I'm pretty sure both of us have weapons grade ADD, so that's not fair.
Same.
Yeah. I forget shit all the time.
Anywho,
Sparkstorm.
wait, do I have to re-drag my character out?
Might. But what's happening on Roll20 is
There.
secondary to what I want you to do first, which is look at your Sparkstorm tab and divvy out 10 core stats.
Oh, we're already doing today's session. Like, I'm doing that later. If I have too much to focus on. Like, I'm not picking skills right now or stats.
Not skills. You got to do your core stats, or you ain't gonna be able to roll shit, man.
That's fine.
He's
Like I said, I didn't know I had homework before today. I was gonna play off my old one for today if I didn't otherwise.
Okay,
I'll look,
well,
but I'm telling you, like,
your old one is 18.
Whenever you're ready to go, I'm already starting to record, so like we can get going because I know it's Thursday and Man Bear will pass out if we're at 8:02. So
yep.
The only reason why I'm late is because I worked out and I was stuffing my face full of tacos.
Well, that seems counterproductive. Work out and face full of tacos.
How do you think he can keep eating the tacos?
Yeah, it was the tacos that got me through the workout.
And the workout is the taco tax.
Yeah. I asked Katie, like, I was literally, do it for the tacos, because we were doing, it was Pilates, and it's the thing where you lay on one side, and then you lift your leg, and you do a whole bunch of, like, different, like, you do circles, and then big circles, and then you do, like, figure eights, and you do forward and backwards, to the point where the side of your butt is literally melting, and then you try to do bounces, and then your butt is not even strong enough to lift your leg anymore.
What is US?
United
Huh?
States.
Huh?
United States.
Well, that's USA. And that I
No,
don't
that's
think that
United
fits
States
in
of
on his.
America.
I don't think that fits in on his sheet here. It says POW/US. I don't know what US is.
I don't know what you're looking
Are we
at.
good on Twitch? Can you hear us? All right.
Oh no, I'm not on it.
Let me check.
Ugh.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, Johnny, bring us into the podcast and then start us off.
All right, everybody. It's been a while since we visited the world of Powerless. Last time we were with our heroes, they were adventuring deep, deep below the ocean to fight the cult of Cthulhu and free the fishmen from his tyrannical reign, only to find various twists and turns. Basically, they beat him in the return to the world. I could do a full recap on that. It'd take like half an hour. But I'm going to explain everything that happened during our last run. So sit down, sit tight, because a lot happened after they returned from Neptunia.
Neptunia was underwater, right?
Yep, you guys did a lot down there. And
I
I
do
have a
remember.
whole recap for that I did last time we played. But I'm recapping what happened last time we played this time. All right, after everything that happened in Neptunia, our heroes returned to the surface with the Red Raiders and found that some things had changed on the surface. The mind wave from Cthulhu may have been interrupted by Maelstrom, who had stabbed Murloc at the moment, but a small percentage of people across the globe seemed to have turned into beastmen and birdmen as well as fishmen. On top of this, a drug was being distributed throughout Century City that could grant superpowers to anybody who takes it. Now that superpower criminals were becoming a problem, Mayor Chance had signed a contract with Maltech to use its new defense robots to patrol the city streets, the Maldroids. Chadwick had reunited with his parents, who have become painfully aware of Chadwick's vigilante nightlife. Chad's father had only one condition for his son to continue: attend the remainder of classes this school year. Chadwick agrees to his parents' relief, but he would continue pursuing adventure in the city. Having arrived on a Saturday, he had a fair amount of time to investigate the city before school, and quickly encountered the Maldroids patrolling the city. While trying to get a closer look, Chadwick discovered that the machines didn't take kindly to curious kids and was forced to flee the scene. Frequency had a similar encounter. While trying to perform recon on the machines from a safe distance, it became apparent that the machines had noticed his behavior. Frequency wasted no time trying to shake them from his trail and chose to head toward the Capes agency to find some answers. The agency was on lockdown, it seemed, as police tape blocked off the building and more machines were patrolling the agency than other parts of the neighborhood. Frequency decided to enter from the secret entrance, and strangely enough, the machine security presence seemed less attentive to Frequency's activity here. After entering, he noticed red and green lights at each intersection and chose to disregard them and head towards his old rooming area. It was there he found Barracuda, who had killed all the guards on her way there and tossed them into a closet. She stated that she was merely following Frequency's trail and wound up here, though she knew as little as he did. The PA activated and semi-subtly asked Frequency to follow the green lights. He did so and found a small secret room with Blind Justice inside. Seeking to inform Frequency, he stated that Fat Chance, the notorious leader of Century City's mafia and current mayor, had signed some form of arms deal with Maltech, a mysterious robotics company. The laws within Century City have been bent to the extreme, and now these robots uphold most of the laws with an iron fist, whilst the mafia do as they please. Any and all opposition from vigilantes has been aggressively suppressed. The guards Barracuda killed were members of Fat Chance's mafia looking for any remaining superheroes. Blind Justice also explained that he lost contact with Gizmo Girl, whose last known location was within the Giz Mansion. While Frequency is looking for leads on Gizmo Girl, he decides to visit the location of his family, where they lived in the world he hails from. And he watches from a distance and realizes they have a kid who looks much like a much younger version of him, a much younger Zach Johnson. Eventually, The next day in SOS comes from Capes. I don't have this part properly summarized, but they do find that it was besieged by Killjoy, a clown-like mercenary who nearly killed Blind Justice within his headquarters, and stuffed a bomb in his mouth that they managed to defuse and save Blind Justice. And it was a note from Killjoy on it, directing Frequency to go to his house, and he found that Killjoy kidnapped the young Zach Johnson, more or less posing as their babysitter.
I did talk to him during that encounter as well.
Like I said, that part's not properly summarized.
Basically, I found out he somehow managed to get all his personalities from every single dimension crammed in his skull.
Oh,
So the killjoy I actually like and the douchebag civil servant that he is in this dimension were all one in the same jumbled head.
shit. I forgot. I told you all that.
Yippers.
Anyways, the next day, our heroes receive a pager message from the bounty hunting ex-cop Johnny Law, who they had briefly worked with before boarding the Waterbreaker. With only one full day before the school week, the duo decided to respond to Law, who directed them towards an under-patrolled bridge to meet at its underpass. Law greets them as in the company of some new faces. They never properly introduce themselves, but at least one of them looks like a werewolf. One appears to be a creepy little zombie girl. Another seems to be no more than a simple man named Jack who enjoys a good joint. There was a fifth presence, it seemed, but whoever it could be wasn't apparent. Law, seeing as how harshly vigilantes were treated, decided to form his own extra lawless group and calls them the anti-hero group. Law's proposition to our heroes was to target and kill a former member of the Nobody Gang who was laying low. This target's name is simply Mr. Blank. This was an odd request, as Law had a grudge against Fat Chance's gang and had no reason to concern himself with the remnants of the Nobody Gang who had long lost since the gang war, though our heroes accepted as they knew the Nobody Gang were actually former associates of Gadget Man and could maybe use Mr. Blank as a lead to enter the Giz Mansion. Our heroes confronted their target, Mr. Blank, in an alleyway. He was in the middle of delivering a package to his current boss, a man wearing a shining red mask, someone called Gearhead. Blank bought enough time for Gearhead to escape and fought Frequency valiantly. Blank used his strength to hold his own against Frequency, but for some reason didn't activate his superpowers until he was near death. As the battle went on, he covered his body with a coat of metal, but before it could be finished, Frequency convinced Blank to stand down. Blank, realizing that death was avoidable for everyone in that alley, obliged. He said, "My mission is accomplished. Anyway, it doesn't matter what happens between us from here after this." He was seemingly cooperative with Frequency's demands, even answering all of his questions without complaint. He almost seemed robot-like upon further inspection. In fact, he sort of was. He explained that his metal skin is a power that is limited to a fraction of effectiveness by his programming. When asked what that means, Blank explains that he and the gang, the Nobody Gang, were actually a group of androids from Duet, known as moderators. Each moderator has the intended design flaw of not being able to use more than a fraction of their power without self-destructing unless they serve an admin. Wait, slow down. What's Duet and what are admins? Frequency asked. Duet, he explains, is basically the deepest part of cyberspace, and admins are the gods of Duet. They're often just called Ennead gods. He goes on to explain that Gizmotech and the Giz Mansion were not owned by Gadget Man, but by an admin from Duet named Amun, who had taken on the identity of Gerald Gizmo. Blank goes on to say that Gadget Man served as Amun's primary moderator, as well as Mafia head Tony Nada. The Nobody Gang was a front to control the criminal underworld and keep actual crime to a minimum. The entire gang, including Nada, were all moderators for Amun, or Mr. Gizmo, if you will. He goes on to explain that after Gerald Gizmo disappeared, Gadget Man cut ties with the rest of the gang and worked mostly through Gizmo Girl. The pieces were still hazy to Frequency, but some things made sense, such as Gizmo Girl barely having any fame in this world, as she was apparently a recent sidekick of Gadget Man. The rest of the story, however, was a bit absurd, as he merely insisted that Blank show him how to enter the Giz Mansion. Blake insisted that he didn't even know where the secret entrance was, as Tony Nada worked from a distance and kept a lot of secrets from the gang. Frequency decided to contact Barracuda as he needed a tracker and asked her to accompany Blank in tracking down the entrance. She agreed, but considered this a job and required payment. Chadwick had his own adventure on Monday, his first day of school. As his homeroom teacher called attendance, he came to know of a few students who stood out. First was Nathan Nill and Biff Buster, who seemed like troublemakers. Then were Benjamin Bright and Kane Edenson, who were the nerd and goth kid respectively. Most notably was the class president, Angelica Justice, who Chadwick was smitten with, though she was a bit too preppy and seemed out of his league.
Mitten.
One more, yeah, smitten. I smudged that word. One more name stood out as the teacher called attendance. Violet Virtue, who was notably absent, but sounded familiar. There was also Timothy Fields, a quiet kid. During recess, Chadwick noticed Biff Buster bullying Kane and Ben and chose to intervene. He stopped himself, though, as he knew it was a bad idea to stand out while being a vigilante. Thankfully, though, another student intervened. It was Nathan, and he made it clear to Biff that bullies like him should know their place. Intimidated, Biff backed down and left. Nathan acknowledged that he knew Chadwick wanted to step in and admitted that before walking off. Later during PE, the quiet kid, Timothy Fields, quickly stood out as the fastest kid in class, and while running laps, he was insanely fast, but apparently wasn't fast enough for the coach, who was also his father. Coach Tracker Fields yelled at and mistreated Timothy in front of the other students after he lost a race against Sparkstorm, or Chadwick. Nathan Nill confronted the coach and punched him before being carried off by a Meldroid for his aggression. One of the students, Biff Buster, the bully, scoffed at this and remarked that a weakling like him should know when to keep their heads down. The preppy-looking student, Angelica Justice, mentioned to Chadwick that she would request her father to pull some strings to remove Coach Fields from their school. After school, our heroes located the residence of the former PE teacher of Century City High, Coach Tracker Fields. They had initially intended to prank him, but upon investigating his house, they found it empty, with most of the furniture removed, all but some empty syringes and a shattered photo of the Fields family smiling together. Perceptive as they were, they noticed an individual open the door just before leaving with a dash. Frequency, using his speed, was able to catch the fleeing individual and take them back to the empty house. As it turned out, this individual was Timothy Fields, who apparently possessed super speed. Via some light interrogation, they learned that Coach Fields had amplified Timothy's speed with StatX, the super drug that's been circulating around the city, and had planned to use his speed to gain large sums of money to pay for the treatment of Timmy's mother, who was gravely ill. On top of all this, Timothy explained that the house was rigged with a timer to explode if Timothy didn't reset it. Chadwick, using his engineering skills and electric powers, was able to defuse the timer just before it went off. They then released Timothy and told him that he needs to stand up to his father. Later that night, they were contacted.
Do you have water? Do you have a drink? You're making me.
I should grab water. Give me some second. I'll be back. I'm going to get some water.
You're making me parched. Just listen to you. Don't mean to derail him or anything. But all right, it's coming back to me. I mean, it's sounding what I remember. Yep. Can I respect? What's your character's name? Or is it too early for that? You muted.
It's on the docks.
I mean, we'll find out eventually. Right?
What are you guys asking?
Nothing.
What my character's name is.
You're a butthead.
You'll find out eventually.
All
right.
It's fine.
Anyways, carrying on with the recap. Later that night, our heroes are contacted by Barracuda, who had found the location to the Giz Mansion entrance. As they answer Barracuda's call, our heroes make their way through the forest surrounding the Giz Mansion. According to our tracking skill, the secret entrance was located within, behind a waterfall flowing from the plateau, which serves as the foundation for the Giz Mansion. However, she was wary as she sensed another tracker in the woods. Despite knowing that an ambush was likely, Mr. Blank insisted on taking the lead and walking directly towards the coordinates. Before allowing Blank to blindly head into an ambush, Frequency and Sparkstorm decided to set up one themselves. The plan was successful as they managed to lure the foe towards them. The enemy turned out to be two of Vindicator's associates, Vindicator being Johnny Law, his vigilante alias is Vindicator. The enemy turned out to be two of Vindicator's associates, Worgon the Wolfman, and an invisible woman, possibly the fifth presence that they sensed earlier. An invisible archer, as well as a couple of Maldroids. During the battle, Worgon boasted he was the superior tracker as he overpowered Barracuda and withstood Frequency's laser daggers. Meanwhile, Mr. Blank was outflanked by the invisible archer while he attempted to take on the mechanoid. Victory came swiftly, however, when Barracuda decided to leave Worgon to attack the invisible archer. Her tracking skills allowed her to counter the invisibility, while Mr. Blank activated his power and easily overpowered the Wolfman, whose claws couldn't hurt him through his metal skin. Eventually, the battle came to an end when the two mechanoids were defeated. Afterwards, the Frequency confiscated, he made Worgon flee with his tail between his legs, and the archer disappeared, seemingly fleeing. Nobody asked why the mercs were working with the Maldroids, but the heroes learned that Worgon wanted to finish off killing Mr. Blank as part of Vindicator's contract. They also learned that the Maldroids could not be truly destroyed and were bound to reconstruct themselves through mysterious means. Not wanting to waste any time, the group managed to reach the secret entrance, which was behind a small waterfall. And Barracuda was dismissed, as she had done all that she was paid for. On top of that, she wanted nothing to do with the Giz Mansion, saying that she didn't want to enter, as Gadget Man had a particularly frightening reputation amongst the supervillain community. This was quite an admission, considering how brave Barracuda has been up until this point. Upon walking behind the waterfall, our heroes walked into the Grotto, the legendary residence of Century City's Gadget Man. Mr. Blank lost all composure as he was never allowed in, even when he was working for Gadget Man's gangster alias Tony Nada. He became giddy as a schoolgirl to finally be inside the secret HQ. Upon entering, they were ambushed by a cat-like villain in the dark. After defeating her, she explained that she was Cat Scratch, also a former member of the Nobody Gang, and had been keeping an eye on Mr. Blank before following him here. It was clear she had feelings for Blank, but hid it behind insults at his intelligence, making it clear that by android standards, Blank wasn't particularly advanced. She too was an android, and though Frequency wanted more information from her regarding what she knew about Gerald Gizmo, she simply stated that her programming prevents her from discussing anything about that. Frequency recalls that he inherited some of the Star Force of Freedom's power and decided to use that to free Cat Scratch from her programming. Before she has time to react, she begins smoking and firing off sparks, her composure gone as she was screaming in apparent agony. Immediately, a dark figure emerges from the shadows and plunges his fist through Cat's chest, halting her writhing. Infuriated, Mr. Blank rushes towards the figure, who swiftly knocks out the powerful android with a swift strike to the back of his neck. As the dust settles, our hero saw that it was truly Gadget Man, and he was not happy. "Do you think before using your powers?" he shouted, and informed our heroes that all androids from Duet are designed to self-destruct if their programming is bypassed or tampered with. He revealed that he didn't kill Cat Scratch, but manually shut her down so that he could reboot her. While our heroes went through hell and high water to get here, Gadget Man was actually a major dick, so Frequency threatened to use the freedom aspect of Gadget Man to see what happens. Gadget Man was already on edge after his breach, and a small arsenal within his armor emerged and pointed at Frequency. Choosing to de-escalate, Frequency said he was kidding and promised not to. Gadget Man, all the same, kept a safe distance from Frequency. Gadget Man then did the unexpected. He deactivated his power suit. He was now simply Tony Nada, former head of the Nobody Gang and current butler and housekeeper of the Giz Mansion. He explained that he too was restricted to use only a fraction of his power, now that his master, Gerald Gizmo, had vanished. He explained that he suspected a member of the Nobody Gang had somehow violated their programming and trapped Gizmo in cyberspace via the monitor in the Gizmansion. Tony himself couldn't resist his programming to enter Duet, or even learn anything about his homeworld in the cyberworld, and recruited Gizmo Girl to investigate on his behalf. As she made some sort of breakthrough, something happened and she was warped somewhere. Tony revealed that his memory may have been tampered with, as he can't recall much more than that, and believes that Gizmo Girl is trapped in cyberspace along with his boss. Um, Also, when asked about the Maldroids and what made them special, Tony explains that they are composed of a special metal called dualium that comes from Duet. You could call it cyber metal. Their actual bodies and power source exist on a server in cyberspace, and any damage inflicted on them is temporary, as their bodies will simply reload into our world. Dualium can exist in more than one location. While its true form is in cyberspace, but how the Maldroids were created is a mystery, as dualium can only be altered by any gods in Duet or the gods of cyberspace, to put it simply. Our heroes wanted to head into Duet immediately, but Tony insisted that they follow up on their lead with Garnet Gearhead, who Mr. Blank was working for. Gadget Man believes that Gearhead is actually another moderator who is trying to remove the limits of his programming and become an Ennead god himself. If he succeeds, it could trigger a devastating self-destruct sequence in Century City. He believes Gearhead's next activity will be an interaction with a contact from the Chance Mafia, Tommy Gunn, and directs them there. Our heroes comply. The next day, Chadwick attends school as usual, and as the homeroom teacher calls attendance, Violet Virtue is still absent, as well as Timothy Fields. Though he finds that the student named Nathan Nill, who was previously escorted away by Maldroids, has returned to attendance, though he seems more withdrawn. The class assignment for the day is a full day of a crafting project where each student would pair up with one another. Chadwick wound up paired up with Angelica. They worked great together, and at the end of the assignment, he realized she was way smarter than he thought, and they wound up getting second place to Nathan, who somehow made a small functional robot from the school scrapyard. Chadwick actually made a move on Angelica, and it worked. They made plans to go on a date with each other after school. Frequency, hearing the news, decided he should invite Barracuda out so they could go on a double date before the mission at night. It was a surprisingly eventful date, as Angelica was actually the daughter of General Justice and was constantly being followed by Maldroids and security guards. Frequency and Barracuda decided to have some fun and lead the security astray so that Chad and Angelica could get some breathing room. It was all around a great night, although some people side-eyed Barracuda for being half fish. Chadwick even bought some comic books for Angelica, who was secretly kind of nerdy and into that stuff. Afterwards, Frequency and Chadwick geared up for the mission to confront Garnet Gearhead during his meeting with Tommy Gunn. While infiltrating, they are snuck up on by the Wolfman Wargon, but before he does anything, Frequency and Chad make it clear they know he's there. Wargon tucks his tail as he remembers nearly dying when he fought them last, and spills the beans on why he's there. Apparently, Vindicator wanted Wargon to stop anybody from interfering with Tommy Gunn's transaction that night. Didn't make sense as to why Vindicator would provide protection for a member of Chance's gang, as he clearly had a deep-seated grudge against Tommy Gunn specifically. But those questions were neither here nor there, and they told Wargon to beat it. He did so, and the heroes managed to ambush the gangsters, but mid-battle, Tommy Gunn flees out the back, while Wargon's partner, Jack Stalker, covers the mobster's escape. Gearhead exits out the other side of the building after retrieving something from Gunn, and rides off on a strange motorcycle. Frequency, using his super speed, is able to catch up to Gearhead and place a tracker on his motorcycle, but is forced to retreat as Gearhead shakes Frequency by passing through a road checkpoint guarded by Maldroids, who, for some reason, ignore Gearhead. The next day, our heroes wake up to find the city in chaos. The Maldroids have collectively gone haywire, and the city is on lockdown. Needless to say, school was canceled. Frequency and Sparkstorm are alerted by Gadget Man that he has tracked down where the Maldroid server connection is, and if they can sever the link, the Maldroids will all stop. Wasting no time, our heroes head to the location while weaving their way through the chaos in the city. Making their way through the chaos, they find Gearhead on his coordinates as well and follow him. They see that Gearhead parks in front of a building with the Meltech logo and has gotten off of his bike to speak with a familiar man outside. The man is comfortably flanked by two Maldroids and is wearing a smug expression. Gearhead seems furious with the man, shouting that this wasn't what he meant when he called for a distraction and that nobody needed to get hurt tonight. The smug man just let out a dry laugh and demanded that Gearhead offer the package. Gearhead, enraged, used some kind of power to deconstruct the two mechanoids and destroy them. The smug man wasted no time getting on his knees and offered Gearhead a gift wrap box, stating it's his end of the deal. Gearhead takes the box and, seemingly in a rush, opens it without question, but instantly seems to be affected by some force inside. What the hell? He yells in confusion and collapsed to his knees. The smug man laughed. You wanted to be a god, but you were always a pawn. Here's a gift befitting one, he chided, before leaving to the buildings that they were standing next to. He also took the package from Gearhead before doing that. Metal began forming around Gearhead rapidly, and he appeared to be turning into a massive metal monster and started rampaging into the city. Frequency and Sparkstorm decided to split up, despite Gadget Man yelling over the comms to focus on infiltrating Maltech. Frequency was about to rush into the facility, but noticed Mr. Blank had also arrived and seemed to be in a state of legitimate despair, as he was clearly attached to Gearhead and felt as though he had failed in his duty to protect him. As Frequency was prepared to dismiss Blank in his misery, he noticed smoke emitting from his body as thicker layers of metal were developing over him. It was apparent that Mr. Blank was trying to commit suicide by overclocking his limiters. Frequency, having a soft spot for Blank, decided to convince him to calm down and stop using his powers. He succeeded and even convinced Mr. Blank to join him in entering the Maltech facility. Sparkstorm followed Gearhead on a magnetized garbage lid that he had transformed into a floating hoverboard. As he pursued Gearhead, a sonic boom whirred past him. It was Gadget Man, who apparently had the ability to fly at Mach speeds with jets built into his armor. When Sparkstorm caught up to Gearhead, he found Gadget Man standing over his body, whose helmet was now gone. It was revealed that Gearhead was actually his classmate, Nathan Nill. And he was delirious, muttering that what he saw changed everything. How Gadget Man subdued him was unknown, but there was no time to explain. He gruffly urged Sparkstorm to regroup with Frequency while he transports Gearhead somewhere. After regrouping and infiltrating the Meltech lab, our heroes find that the Maldroids weren't going completely berserk, as they were accompanied by soldiers in Meltech battle armor, and together they were killing the scientists inside of the building. While fighting their way deeper, they found that the Maldroids had developed the ability to imitate various people and superpowers. Each time our heroes defeated one, it dissolved into pixels and exclaimed that combat data had been collected. While checking some data logs in the facility, our heroes learned that the Maldroids were primarily designed to collect combat data from superhumans and use this data to create a super weapon for Dr. Malice, their creator. They also learned that Dr. Malice, the director of Maltech, had an obsession with dualium and wanted to use it to create even more advanced robots. The most informative log was that of Dr. Dean Richards. Director Malice is exploring fields of science decades beyond what our society is prepared for. He somehow found a type of metal that exists, while paradoxically not existing at all. This metal, dualium, as Malice has coined it, can be copied and pasted, and even restored to an earlier state. It's a form of metal composed of data. They learn in the notes. Further perusing the notes, it remarks on Dr. Malice's hired goon, seemingly, or the government agent, Killjoy, going by the name Killian Joy. And One of the scientist logs states that new agent, Mr. Joy. I'm not sure why a government spook like him is watching our project so closely. Since we started experimenting with dualium, he hasn't left the director's side. Killian, that's what he calls himself. The other scientists can't even look him in the eye, but when I do, I can see why. If pure evil looked like a man, it's him. Ever since he came here, Malice's research has gone off the far end. Our latest research has been used to create weapons made of dualium. They have been loaned out to the corrupt mayor of the city to control it. Chadwick was able to download some of these corrupted logs, and may have or may not have been a virus on it. Within one of the logs was one from Malice himself. Stated, my assistant from Force has found a man who calls himself Gearhead. Ridiculous names aside, this man has the unusual ability to produce metals, the likes of which mankind has never known. I don't know how Mr. Joy convinced this gearhead to cooperate, but he is willing to produce as much of this metal as I need. Dualium. Nothing in this world exists which cannot be improved. That's my philosophy. Even with this new metal, I see so many possibilities and applications. The future of humanity is a blank slate, and with dualium as my paint, I am its artist. I've created weapons whose abilities are without limit. While the fool general is concerned about people with superpowers, I can emulate and improve upon them. My mechanoids are the ultimate weapon, and after acquiring enough combat data, I will finally be able to create the ultimate mechanoid. Soon I will introduce the world to Alloy Man, and with its power, I will ... The files were too corrupted to read further from there. Upon further infiltrating the facility, Frequency and Sparkstorm even encountered two mechanoids who seemed to be copying them. Although their use of their abilities was much more limited than what Sparkstorm or Frequency could actually do. When they finally reached the final chamber, they found that all the pixel defeated Maldroids were reforming here into the center of the room, and that the smug man who had tricked Gearhead was all the way into the back by a control panel. He mocked our heroes as being just in time for the show. Not one to allow a villain their fair shot at mocking, Frequency rushed at the man, but was just a few steps away before the man activated something on the control panel and teleported away. Not only was the guy gone, but the mass of pixels in the center of the room was forming into a massive battle robot. Dr. Malice's super weapon known only as Alloy Man. Give me a second. Are
you out of breath?
A little bit. Well, still got a lot more to go. You guys did a lot. Give me a second.
He's leveling up his narrate skill. He's on that grind right now.
Yeah, apparently we did a lot. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The battle with Alloy Man was intense as his entire body was covered from head to toe with weaponry. But all the same, our heroes defeated their adversary, and just like the Maldroids, much of its body was dissipating into pixels. But strangely, a young, unconscious boy was lying amidst the remains of Alloy Man. Mr. Blank unexpectedly seemed ready to kill the kid, as his existence defied all the laws of his people. This child's body was pure dualium and was created by the hands of a mortal man. Infuriated Blank is something like this should only be created by an Ennead god. And Blank was nothing if not adherent to his programming. Just as Frequency was prepared to fight Blank to protect the kid, Gadget Man warned them over the gridometer that soldiers from Force were storming the building and that they need to escape. Our heroes stood their ground as there was no way they were going to leave a helpless kid here. Before Blank could act on his threats, a squad of soldiers stormed the room, with one at the center holding a metal rod over his head. Sparkstorm decided to hit them all with a sweeping electric blast, but the one with the rod attracted all of the attack into himself, as if he was expecting this. And he seemed to be entirely unharmed. When he spoke, he announced that he was General Justice. Stand down and hand themselves over. Blank and Frequency called a truce. While Blank charged at the soldiers, Frequency grabbed the kid and used his super speed and transparency powers to escape. Though it wasn't easy, as some of the soldiers outside had thermal goggles and nearly saw him. While Blank was dealing with the soldiers, Sparkstorm was dealing with the general himself. He tried to shock Justice to no effect, and even swung his tomahawk into the general, but they didn't even cut his skin with a direct blow. The general eventually grabbed Sparkstorm by the neck and began tightening his grip. Sparkstorm choked out a demand to Gadget Man over the gridometer to do something, anything. Just then, Sparkstorm, along with General Justice, were teleported into the Gizmo glider in the skies of Century City. Gadget Man's personal fighter jet. General Justice was surprised enough to let go, and before he could react, Gadget Man rushed from the cockpit, grabbed Sparkstorm, and ejected both of them from the vehicle as it self-destructed with the general on board. Frequency, still in a rush, brought the kid to the only people he could trust, his parents. He knew they had just lost Zach Johnson from this world, who was abducted by Killjoy, but he had nowhere else to turn to. They agreed to watch over the boy as if he were their own and wouldn't trust any more shady babysitters either. Chadwick was transported home by Gadget Man, who was less than thrilled that he had to destroy the Gizmo glider. And he told Sparkstorm to be ready tomorrow as the portal to cyberspace was stabilized. But he wasn't sure if he could maintain it indefinitely. Chadwick assured Gadget Man that he would be ready, but needed to check on Angelica, as he couldn't contact her while the Maldroids were rampaging across the city. Upon reaching Angelica's house, he found every door locked and her room destroyed. But strangely enough, it was from an explosion from inside the room that caused the damage. Thankfully, there was no sign of blood, nor a body, but all the same, Chadwick was filled with concern. Give me a second. The rest of the recap is, I must have copied and pasted something weird. I gotta keep scrolling down. I'll get to it. Okay. Later, our heroes winded down from their battle with Alloy Man and their escape from General Justice. Frequency returned to Mr. Blank's shack, and I didn't mention this in the recap. Mr. Blank is accompanied by other robots like him. He calls them Meta Men. They don't have any crazy powers; they're just kind of like weak androids. And he's kind of shacking up in an unoccupied building in the outskirts of Century City. He's shacking up with his Meta Men. Anyways, Frequency returned to Mr. Blank's shack and assured the Meta Men that Mr. Blank is probably fine, but he told them to clean up because the place is a dump. Chadwick returned to his neighborhood and rescued a woman who was trapped in a burning house. She recognized him as Chadwick, but he was out of costume, so she didn't see him as Sparkstorm. The next morning, Sparkstorm checked up on Angelica, who he definitely was not dating, and heard that she was okay, though she didn't explain why there was an explosion from inside her room. Chadwick also watched the news with his parents and found out that Blind Justice was officially reopening Capes Inc., and vigilante licenses were being issued there. Unfortunately, Maltech was trying to pin the Maldroid attack on Frequency and Sparkstorm with the evidence of low-quality camera footage. As far as Chadwick is aware, this is only Maltech pushing this narrative, and it may be possible to clear their names. Though now is not the time for that.
Wait,
Afterwards,
the low quality camera footage didn't happen to be in New York outside of a hotel, right? Just kidding.
Yeah, I see what that's a reference to. Oh, they're going to catch you outside of a McDonald's.
Inside of McDonald's? Also, shacking up with someone does not mean you're just living in a shack with someone.
Oh, really? I've been misusing that word all my life.
Means a little more than that, but
Shit, that's awkward.
Nervous Plug and I are dying over here as you're talking.
Whoops. As far as Chadwick is, I'm continuing on.
Fair. Please do.
As far as Chadwick is aware, this is only Meltech pushing this narrative. It may be possible to clear their names. Afterwards, Chadwick bid farewell to his loving parents and assured them he definitely wasn't going to do anything that may be dangerous or cause him to be gone from home for a concerning amount of time. He then left to meet an android butler in a creepy cave so that he could travel to another dimension with his dangerous new friend who likes stabbing people. When our heroes entered the cyber world and met a local engineer, named Harry Rath. They spawned inside of his workshop. Apparently, Gizmo Girl and another individual appeared here earlier, he told them, when they asked her about her. She apparently ran northwards towards the more prosperous section of Duet, while the other individual went on a small rampage in the city before disappearing with, bright lights of destruction. But he didn't see much else besides that. Anyways, our heroes were more concerned about Gizmo Girl and decided to head north to find her. As our heroes were departing to the desert of Duet to the north, they noticed a ragtag band of looters working their way down the streets and eventually stopped at Harry's place. Unwilling to ignore the danger these looters might pose to the mechanic, the two heroes ambushed the looters, who quickly made short work of their leader before scaring the rest of them off. However, Frequency took the leader's electrically charged sword and commissioned Harry to forge it into a powerful new weapon. Sparkstorm, on the other hand, looted some odd tech from the corpses of the bandits, and to his relief, it didn't disappear from his possession like most tech that is tied to Duet. Afterwards, our heroes said their goodbyes and made their way north to the upper region of Duet, despite Harry's warnings that the moderators who serve Emperor Anubis would be hostile to any outsiders seeking entry into the capital of Duet. He also kind of explained the general layout of Duet. They spawn inside Duet City, which is guarded by a series of walls. To the north, there is a vast desert before you can actually reach the capital city. So they're pretty far from the capital. Anyways, our heroes were about to enter the desert north of Duet City with the intention of reaching the capital where Gizmo Girl had headed. Upon entering the edge of the desert, they found a bar with an ornery con man and a depressed robot who repeatedly warned them about the desert. Our heroes thought it was weird that the two of them assumed they were heading north, but really, nobody goes out that way unless they're trying to go north, and besides that, our heroes would later learn that the bar owner's real business was smuggling people across the desert. So it's not a weird assumption to make, really, that that's what our heroes wanted to do. Anyways, our heroes steal the bike because the con man tried to shoot them and returned it to Harry so that he could try to find a power source for it. Meanwhile, they decided to head southeast into Duet City to the giant robot, where they found it was heavily guarded and under construction. Yeah, there's a giant robot that was hard to miss in the city. I forgot to mention.
Yep, I remember that.
So they went towards it while they were waiting for Harry to finish this bike. Sparkstorm bluffed his way in past the guards and even met the head scientist who was in charge of the robot, a moderator named Ramses. After being allowed to work on the robot, Sparkstorm noticed that the reason it couldn't power on was that a sort of beam entered the side of it and pierced straight through the giant battery. Kind of like a lightsaber, like a giant one. It just plowed straight through the armor and everything. And the battery was destroyed in the process. Sparkstorm removed the damaged battery and managed to 5 seconds. Before doing anything too suspicious, our heroes decided then to leave, but not before Ramses mentioned that he would send a commendation to Emperor Anubis for Sparkstorm's performance. Our heroes convinced Ramses that they were agents of Anubis and gained enough trust to be given command of the giant robot while he leaves to the capital city of Duet. Because Ramses was summoned by Anubis to go there. Why he had to leave was a mystery, but it was urgent as he immediately encased himself in a suit of metal armor, similar to Gadget Man's, and he flew off in a flash. Our heroes wasted no time. While Sparkstorm studied the robot, Frequency organized the soldiers. Sparkstorm learned that the robot was called Pharaoh 1, and it was the core part of a series of robots designed to be piloted by 5 of Anubis's moderators and combined to create a powerful weapon strong enough to storm past the wall and conquer Anubis's enemies beyond the borders of the city. He also familiarized himself with its various power systems and discovered a power intake port that was intact and closer to the ground than the damaged one that was on its head. Our heroes also learned that the soldiers weren't allowed to learn anything about the robot's workings, and that Ramses only let the soldiers handle the grunt work. The soldiers all appeared to be incredibly ignorant in many matters, and even not knowing how dirty their water was, or that the imprisoned ravagers could be persuaded to perform labor to avoid execution. Although, talked to the guards, they did learn that somebody did attack the robot, and that's why it was in such a bad state. You know, they emitted a white light kind of laser blast towards it. They don't know what.
I do remember that time because Frequency was purifying water, and they're like, "Oh, we've just been drinking this sludge this whole time."
Yeah, they didn't know any better. Anyways, our heroes had the robot repowered and ready for basic operations. But rather than commandeer it, they decided to appeal to the moderator in charge of it, Ramses, by leaving it nice and ready for him when he returns. While staying in the city, our heroes decided it would be a good idea to go shopping in a futuristic city, and they weren't left disappointed. Sparkstorm learned the basics of enchanting with Dualium when he visited an enchanting shop. And it was much like adding computer code to real objects, he learned. Zam, the store owner, also sold him a manual of enchanting so that he could train himself more advanced ways to apply Dualium. Sparkstorm enchanted his axe with basic restoration code so that it could respawn in his possession within 48 hours if it's lost or destroyed. He then went on to buy some batteries and a small generator. He learned that batteries, and especially Dualium, precious and diminishing resource that the Empire often confiscates for its own use. He also learned that the batteries were largely universal and were designed to fit in various charging ports that stemmed from somewhere deeper within the planet. Most of the charging ports no longer work, though, or are slowly dying. Ooh. Frequency bought himself a cool headset that allows heat detection and X-ray vision with some other lock setting, as well as a new pair of running shoes. Afterwards, they investigated the southern bridge and found a massive unmoving robot gripping it and barely hanging on. Our heroes were investigating the southern wall, and the guard post to the very edge of it was separated from the rest of the city by a large ravine with a bridge between them and a giant robot being the only thing in the ravine. It went down who knows how far, they couldn't see the bottom of it. The robot was quite tall, though, and was barely hanging on. It's just like the tips of its fingers were touching the bridge as they crossed it. Anyways, using his, I think you were using that goggles that you bought to, Frequency sensed the signature of power within this giant robot, and went on a bit of a side quest to get a large chunk of Dualium from inside of it, nearly falling out of it and into the ravine in the process.
I remember that, yep.
Luckily, you guys rolled really well and managed to not fall down there and got back on the bridge. You guys went further south towards the guard post that was there and made with a... The guards were actually really chill. They were just as ignorant as the other guards. They didn't try to stop you. So you kind of spoke with them. You even made a wager with the guards on who could win at target practice after finding out that they were taking pot shots at giant metallic bugs that were approaching from the other side of the wall. Every now and then, on the other side of the wall, giant metallic insects would try to breach it, and they would just shoot it down with giant guns that they were manning along the walls. Anyways, you made a wager with them that you could shoot them. The guards eagerly took frequency up on that wager, and the guards basically beat him. They shot the giant metal scorpion, took it down before Frequency could. Frequency took it well enough, though. He took it like a good sport and spoke to the guards for a while longer. He learned that beyond the wall, where all the machines were infected with the Apophis virus. Apparently, this virus bestows sentience to machines, and any who are infected were either wiped out or sealed beyond the wall. They mentioned that the western wall was much harder to guard than the southern wall, but didn't elaborate much on that. Frequency again observed strange behavior from these guards, and even learned that they don't bleed when their skin is cut, because they're androids. They also mentioned that their station commander, Hotep, doesn't like it when the subject of their humanity comes up. So they usually don't talk about it. As our heroes ventured north to return to Harry's shop, they quickly realized just how dark the world was at night. In cyberspace, with no moon, everything was pitch black at night, and the only light to be had was from the scattered street signs and neon lights that remained on after dark. Cautiously, our heroes walked from street to street, alley to alley, until they inevitably found some Ravagers who were scavenging for materials. Some of the scavengers were using a makeshift light source to see where they were going. It's best described as a shopping cart filled with various lights and some small batteries to keep them lit. Sparkstorm and Frequency ambushed the Ravagers, and while fighting, heard one of them remark that he was going to collect a bounty on their head from the Emperor before he was killed by Frequency and Sparkstorm. Shortly after that, they heard more fighting down the street. It appeared somebody else was fighting Ravagers nearby. Investigating this other commotion, our heroes came across the guard commander that was mentioned earlier, Hotep, a moderator who patrols the southern wall, as he was being ambushed by a pack of Ravagers. Our heroes chose to help the Ravagers take down Hotep. After doing so, the leader of the Ravager gang introduced himself as a former moderator who refused the blessings of Anubis and wanted to unlock his power by hunting down other moderators and using their dualium to manually alter his code and remove the restrictions the Ennead gods place on their creations. After hearing this, Frequency offered to use his Star Force of Freedom to unlock it instantly for him. The godless moderator eagerly agreed, and as soon as Frequency used his power, a similar thing happened to him that happened to Cat Scratch in the Gizmo Grotto. The moderator starts smoking, sizzling, glitching, seizing before collapsing. Before giving this guy's minions time to react, or took their share of the loot and ran off to Harry's place because they were all standing around wondering what the fuck was going on with their leader. Upon arriving there, Frequency recalled what happened when he cut the guard's skin and asked Harry if he could cut him as well. Mildly bewildered, he agreed, and as Frequency's knife cut the skin, there was again no blood, much like with the guards. When Frequency mentioned that Harry was just like them, Harry protested, saying that he was not, and he knew things about Duet and Gizmo Girl that nobody else could. And now, trusting our heroes, he was prepared to discuss those things. He had a floppy disk that Gizmo Girl gave him as she entered cyberspace. And printed upon it was the title, which is called The Truth. He says to our heroes, she says when the time came, I would know how to use it, that it would clear this fog in my mind. Honestly, I've been afraid to use it. Oh, wait, he talks with a southern accent. Give me a second. She says when the time came, I would know how to use it, that it would clear this fog in my mind. Honestly, I've been afraid to use it. There's a comfort in ignorance, and only knowing what I must. You understand? He holds the floppy disk to his chest, and it emits a soft glow. Ones and zeros light up over Harry's skin and close for a moment. His eyes fly open in surprise before a calm expression washes over him. It's a lot. Please ask your questions. I've become very tired suddenly. I believe my body sees this knowledge as a virus and is exhausting itself trying to subdue it. And then he goes on a sort of pre-recorded monologue explaining some lore. This world, Duet, is only 10 years old. 10 years ago, as pioneers of your world first began exploration into the cyber world, they found this place. What your world calls the internet is the shallows of the field that divides our realities. A few from your world went deeper than these shallows and found our God asleep before the first thought of creation ever entered her mind. At that time, she was pure, and this world was a blank slate. When those pioneers discovered her, they found that she could form matter from data. They discovered a way of communicating with our God through numbers, ones and zeros, lines of code. This God, the mechanizer, as their pioneers dubbed it, was a newborn. She was impressionable and allowed the pioneers to make suggestions. To them, they were merely altering a foreign program, but to her, she was finally waking up. They tested her limits. First, they asked her to make a world. She did so in an instant. They asked her to make life, and she did so. But this life was a blank slate, much like their creator. But they had so much potential. Eventually, these pioneers asked her to give them permission to make these changes themselves, as each had their own ideas that they wanted to introduce to this world. The mechanizer agreed, and so these creator. But these pioneers, they were not slumbering cosmic entities. They were scientists with goals, knowledge, and egos. With their new power, some among them decided that in this world they could live as gods. They would call themselves the Ennead. They molded this world to match much of theirs in likeness. The ones who favored this world had called it Aru, or paradise. These Ennead would mold the people of this world to worship them, with different Ennead believing themselves to have greater rights in this world than others. Their interests conflicted. With the power of the mechanizer, who they had come to call Ra, they created powerful servants to enforce their will and protect their interests from the other gods. These beings would be called moderators. Eventually, these Enneads would grow unsatisfied with merely having influence over this world and would form bodies to house their will. Those giant machines were some of these attempts, but this world wasn't even enough. A few of these Ennead desired to break the barrier between their world and ours. They wanted to be able to reprogram their world just as simply as they could ours. A war erupted as some of the Ennead realized this experiment had gone too far. One among the Ennead carved a piece from Ra herself and created a program that could grant knowledge and awareness to artificial beings. This became the Starforce of Knowledge. Using this power, that moderator, Horus, infected the loyal and ignorant people of Duet with sentience, so that they could decide for themselves whether to serve the Ennead. The gods reacted by attempting to seal away this knowledge through a code block. But it was a small patch for a bug they couldn't remove. War erupted in Aru, as those who willfully chose loyalty to a god waged war against the others. And those who forsake the Ennead had much of their strength locked behind firewalls within themselves out of retaliation. The rogue god who created knowledge from the core of Ra eventually used it on Ra herself. Now, truly awake and aware, she sealed away the power hungry and sealed away the knowledge of everyone hoping it would bring peace. Just as the Ennead had done, Ra had done as well, without ego, but also without planning. The war was over. The gods were sealed. The ones she could not contain, she wiped their knowledge and banished to Earth. Their lives to continue as mortals without their memory. A fog enveloped the minds of the people here as they forgot nearly everything that had happened. Lastly, with the power of Ra, she could turn data into reality, and just as your people sent pioneers to our world, She took her power and the Star Force of Knowledge to your world. And then the spell, the trance that Harry seemed to be in ended. He seemed very he seemed to be going through an existential crisis as all the knowledge came flooding into him as he exposited it towards our heroes. He needed some time to himself to ponder over everything he spoke. There were some other things he mentioned that were portions of power. Say this. He says Harry Rath knows Gizmo chose him as a sort of gatekeeper for Outworlders. He knows of the old gods of the Ennead who are sealed away. He knows that Ra, the mechanizer, ruled Duet and split portions of its power to the other gods, but for some reasons, Ra's power had been split and left for this world. Left cyberspace. Under the Ennead rule, an infection began. The people of Aru contracted the Apophis virus, and anybody with it, well, Anubis is the only god now, and he banishes anybody who has the virus outside the walls. He's not a god of paradise, as he claims, but a god of death who seeks to be more. Harry said that Anubis locked knowledge away from the people of Duet, and he's largely the reason why a lot of the people here, including the guards, seem so unwitting. How he does this is a mystery. He seeks to create a paradise meant to last forever, but it's quickly collapsing nonetheless, as even with their knowledge sealed, the people of Duet's will remains. He knows that the walls were not meant to keep out the infected, but to trap those Anubis can control within them. All right. Oh, are you guys still with me?
I gotta get going here pretty quick, man.
I told you this would be a while.
And I told you it's Thursday. I gotta be up in the morning.
All right. I think we're getting there. Okay, our heroes learn from Harry that gives. Okay, I said all this. Hearing all of this was illuminating, but didn't change our heroes' plans. They still needed to go north towards the capital, towards the arena to reach Gizmo Girl. To do so, they headed to the smuggling group that fronts as a bar at the edge of the city. Here they made a deal to procure batteries from the Ravager Band, who used to provide the smugglers with functioning batteries in return. I mean, Ravager Band, they would take it from the Ravager Band. In return, they would be offered safe passage to the capital. All you guys have heard of the arena inside Duet City. You've seen billboards, neon signs, posters, advertising a giant tournament being held there where Anubis would be there personally. The head attraction was a newcomer in cyberspace. The Radical Hunk. You guys vaguely know of him. You've heard of his name. How much you actually know about him, it's up to you to role play. But you know that based on the billboards in Duet City, that he is in the capital and he's going to be playing in a game meant to entertain the Emperor. And Gizmo Girl is going to be there as well, but you don't know why she's there with him. Anyways, the arena is your goal. To get there though, you guys have to get something from the Ravager base. Our heroes scoped out the Ravager base where they needed to find a battery supply for the smugglers. Instead of agreeing to purchase the batteries for an outrageous price, Sparkstorm talked his way to the Ravager leader, a greedy fellow who was mostly made of metal and conducted electricity. They found that this guy had access to a working charging station and was likely why the Ravagers built this base here in the first place. While dealing with the leader, he nearly lost patience with Sparkstorm, who seemed to be beating around the bush. But before things got out of hand, Sparkstorm got him to shake on a deal for the batteries. This was a ploy, however, as Sparkstorm held firm on his grip and siphoned electricity from the Ravager leader, crippling him as the opener for the raid. Frequency had followed Sparkstorm inside with his invisibility. and began to dismantle their defenses from within as soon as Sparkstorm made his move. Together, they methodically took down the interior guards of this fortified base. However, the guards on the outside are armed with dangerous mech suits. Our heroes managed to prevail against them as well, using a giant cannon on the outside, which they hijacked and used to take down the mech suits.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was intense. That was a pretty crazy raid. You guys, that was probably one of the most awesome combat sessions I've ever DM'd. Anyways, our heroes defeated the Ravager gang. In the end, they managed to procure 2 large jerry-rigged mech suits to help transport the hordes of batteries back to the caravan bar. Yeah, you got a lot. You got a big haul, and you walked in suits. Anyways, you guys delivered the stash of batteries to Mortar, and she agrees to provide our heroes with VIP transport, but urges them to be ready by tomorrow as business has been stalling and other clients have been on a waiting list for some time. Our heroes agree to be back by next morning, but before leaving, they return to Harry to make an arrangement with them. They entrust Harry with a warehouse containing the charger and allow him to set it up as a secondary hub. He agrees eagerly, as the energy crisis in Duet City has only gotten worse after the massive robot, Pharaoh Prime, drained a large amount of the city's remaining power during its reactivation. Afterwards, our hero returned to the caravan to find that they were set to leave upon our hero's arrival. Yeah, you guys gave Harry access to the Ravager's charging station, so that was that was pretty cool. So if you ever see Harry again, he's got kind of like a trade route between his shop and the charging station. So
he's hooked up.
Ravager, yeah, he's hooked up. You guys eventually, you guys encounter one of Anubis's guards patrolling the desert, and it was quite the skirmish. Things almost got out of hand, but Frequency managed to use the Star Force of yeah, it was Frequency, I think. No, maybe Chadwick. Chadwick used the Star Force of Authority to basically convince one of the commanders of Anubis's patrols that they're expected in the capital city, and they should kind of just leave them alone. It worked, and after what could have been a huge battle, before that could get even bigger, everybody kind of just left. And our character's caravan continued. It approached what was an abandoned subway station. Brick, the former moderator who was running the caravan, informed them that the subway is a bit of a maze and that they should follow the arrow markers scrawled on the floor to reach the exit into the capital. They parted ways with Brick, and together with the other caravan riders, entered the subway. Upon entering, they found a wounded Imperial soldier and helped patch him up. Our heroes bluffed and told him that they were with a rescue party. The gullible soldier didn't doubt them and informed them that his group was part of an extermination party that was sent to eradicate bugs in the subsystem. He went on to elaborate that a large swarm of spider-like robots had breached the West Gate and had somehow made their way there. He finished by informing them that their group also had a moderator commanding his unit, and that he wishes to regroup with him. Doubting the moderator's well-being, our heroes and the Imperial soldier and the 3 Duet villagers who are with the caravan begin making their way through the infested subway, and will learn that these spider bots primarily focus on sound and are attracted to energy sources. Okay, home stretch, guys. As our heroes sneak past most of the bugs, one of the caravaneers tripped and attracted the attention of the mechanical menaces. While Frequency scrambled to help him up, Sparkstorm used his tomahawk and electric powers to gather the bug's attention and create a distraction when everybody else had gone to safety. Sparkstorm lured the bugs all to one location and used a powerful electric attack to heavily damage the swarm. With Frequency's help, they managed to wipe out the swarm in that room and continued forward. As they did so, they followed the Outrider's signals to an intersection where they noticed a moderator seemingly taunting a massive bug following him away from something. Um, Instead of waiting for the moderator to pass them by, our heroes intervened and assisted the moderator in fighting the giant mech. During the battle, the moderator seemed to have incredible strength and durability, managing to survive multiple barrages from the mech head, all while slashing off one of the mech's legs. While the moderator kept its attention, Frequency used his newly acquired laser rifle to take out one of its spider drone dispensers, while Sparkstorm was analyzing it and draining its power, limiting the use of its more powerful attacks. The mech was powerful, and its energy blast was powerful enough even to severely damage the moderator. But it was eventually pushed to its limits and defeated. Afterwards, Sparkstorm discussed some things with the moderator who had fought by their side. The moderator was a powerful swordsman named Zanacht, who was tasked with the extermination of these bugs. He explained that the swarm was thought to have been the one that broke the Western Gate, although no giant one like this was detected. And Zanacht had no explanation for why something this big was here, in the subways right outside the capital city. He also explained that he had no duty to destroy outsiders and was not obligated to fight our heroes, though he heavily insisted that they had to custom so that they could be handled by a moderator whose jurisdiction was dealing with them. That being said, Zanacht was grateful for their aid, and after Sparkstorm convinced him that he didn't kill Hotep, because somehow Zanacht had a hunch that they had something to do with Hotep's death, Frequency convinced him that they didn't. Zanacht decided that he would put in a good word. After this, Frequency and Sparkstorm finally arrived to the pristine and mysterious capital of Duat. Here they noticed that the city truly looked like a paradise, but it was noticeably devoid of any civilians. Even the plant life that adorned the city was itself a holographic illusion. Venturing further, they approached the arena, a stadium that had been advertised in Duat City and their destination. Upon entering, they noticed that the few staff who worked there seemed completely mindless, even more so than the ones in the lower city. The ticket counter allowed them in immediately with a simple lie, and when they said that they were expected. Upon venturing further into the arena, they followed the sounds of cheering until they found the inner stadium, where a massive game is happening. A shining, muscle-bound man on a flying surfboard was chasing after a ball, and he spiked it into a goalpost before celebrating with a guitar solo, and the crowd went wild. And that was where we left off. That's it, guys. That's
Wait,
the recap.
we weren't on the bridge. We actually made it into the show.
Yeah, you guys actually didn't spend a whole lot of time navigating around the city. You kind of just beeline straight towards the arena.
Kind
The
of, yeah.
bridge. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You pretty much didn't do anything but go straight towards the stadium, and you saw the radical hunk mid goal, and he was playing guitar on a flying surfboard, and that's where things ended.
Yeah, that's pretty much where it ended. Yes.
I feel like that was the last like 4 sessions or 3 sessions.
2.
No. Oh my god. There's another recap. I read it to you guys last time we restarted. Well, we got to my rotation. It's all the stuff that happened in Neptunia and all the stuff you did before Neptunia.
That was
That's a
before.
lot as well.
That was 3. So we've been on yours. Technically, this is the 4th session or 4th campaign of this world. Before this world, your original Powerless was Frequency and Blade Wolfgrass, and then that was your first like run of it. Your second run, we went to Neptunia. The third run, we did everything inside Century City, and the last time we did was pretty much everything inside. Shit, what's the name of this? The digital world.
Duet.
Duet.
Yeah, Duet. Well, Duet's the city.
Or the mega city then. Pretty
Yeah.
much the last or season 1 of podcast is when we went into duet in the beginning.
Yeah, like holy shit. I was reading the recap that I had like summarized. I'm like, they did all this? I was like, oh my god.
You're basically summarizing 2 campaigns.
Yeah, that was 2 stints of yours.
Oh, okay.
You said a lot more of the stuff before we went to duet than I was expecting. That was like probably like the first 45 minutes.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was 2 stints ago.
I thought that was all last rotation. My bad.
I mean, it was great to remember that part because that's why we went into duet, and now we still have to find Gizmo Girl.
Yeah. Anything that I didn't bring up? Anything important? Any questions about that synopsis?
Mm-mm.
What about you, Adam? Did any of that make sense?
Yeah, I could follow it.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Good. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so you guys want to do a comedy?
Want to do a what? Sorry, you cut out there for a second.
You guys want to actually run the session for a little bit tonight?
No.
No?
I think Manbear's about to pass the fuck out.
All right. Next week then.
Next week.
But Mom,
Fight me.
Oh man.
no,
Okay.
that was a yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to do all that, or I didn't know how much you were actually going to like do of the old part. I thought you were going to brief summarize it, and then by the time I was going to interrupt you, say, "Hey, that was 2 stints ago," it was already too deep, and I'm like, okay.
I mean, I don't know if I'm nostalgic or whatnot, but like I feel like I don't know all the stuff that happened before. Maybe it won't matter, maybe it will, but I feel like it's worth bringing back up.
I mean, in this scenario, I'd say yeah, because like that brought us to duet, and now we're in duet, so it's like, and it's a whole different universe too. So
Yeah.
Okay. I have to go to bed.
Do any of you want to work on character building with me, or?
I will talk to you about it later and yell at you some more later. I honestly need to go to sleep.
Okay, good night.
Donnie, can you sign us out of podcast first before
Yep.
before you want to go on to something else?
Oh, I hope all of you guys were following that. Um, it's been a long journey for our heroes, and everything they've done up until now has led them to where we will wind up next week. Um, it's all very important stuff, in my opinion. So, I hope you've enjoyed the journey that I just summarized up till this point.
Next week
And
Friday for me.
yeah, join us again as we.
Next week, Friday should work for me as well. Yes.
All right,
Should be good.
All right,
join
podcast
us.
land. Talk to you guys next week, and see you then.